the dice. This is it. High fly ball into right field. She is gone.
Talking baseball.
The grand salami.
Willie, Mickey, and the Duke.
Welcome to Fed Up, the #1 podcast dedicated to the Federal League. I am your host, Josh Stoll. Season 2, Episode 2, and we have a good one for you today. Joining us first will be AJ Hadley of Max Bats. He's going to help us cover this torpedo bat that has dominated the headlines the last week and a half. We're also going to check out our first ever Fed Up mailbag. Excited to see all of the submissions that you guys have sent our way. We'll be sure to answer as many questions, comments, concerns as we can. To close out our show, we're going to get to know a member of our league that is a cornerstone figure of our offseason, Mr. Chris Kalina. And be sure to stick around after Chris is on because we've got a really exciting programming announcement that we are going to announce today. You'll want to stick around for that as it covers what we'll be covering for the next 2 weeks leading up to the season opener. It's a jam-packed episode, so let's get to it.
Batter up.
Well, it doesn't feel like it's very often when there's an equipment innovation that has the ability to change the game of baseball. So when they happen, we absolutely feel compelled to cover it. I, of course, am talking about the torpedo bat, and that's why we've invited a friend of the podcast back to the show, AJ Hadley from Max Bat. Welcome back to Fed Up.
Stoll, thanks for having me again.
AJ, currently on shift at El Rosa Bar and Lounge, formerly known as Bucky's. So if you need to step away and pour a drink while we're recording here, we'll absolutely forgive you. You have to give the patrons what they want.
I think I'm on union break right now or something like that.
Well, great. Well, tell me, what have the last few weeks been for you? What have they been like?
Well, the last 10 days have kind of been a blur. It just rejuvenated, excited, a lot of emotions, a lot of baseball's back.
Yeah, very cool. And generating a lot of that excitement is the aforementioned torpedo bat. So the Yankees homer in literally their first at-bat of the season, and then they proceed to follow that up with 9 home runs in game number 2. And the torpedo bat has been prominently in baseball headlines ever since. I have to assume that everybody listening has at least heard of this thing, but there has to be some people that may not know a whole lot about it. So first things first, tell us what it is.
Well, the torpedo bat it looks like a bowling pin. The torpedo got its name due to the aforementioned shape of a torpedo. It's interesting because it did get a lot of attention in that Yankee series, but it is nothing new. We were floating around some pictures around the office here throughout the course of last week, and we have a picture from 2001 of a torpedo-shaped bat. And, earlier this fall, it kind of got some traction again in the Arizona Fall League. A couple of our minor league prospects were down there playing, and one of the Yankee prospects ended up winning the home run derby with this odd-shaped bat. And guys reached out and said, I want to try this. And so, we made a few early on. Guys, it's either you really like it or I've been doing this my whole life type of thing. I have a tough time changing. And, we did some more this spring, and the Yankee series, that really will tell the tale.
Well, let's talk about the science behind it, right? So from what I understand, we're putting more mass in the barrel, right? We're shifting that sweet spot in towards the handle, maybe 6-7 inches. Tell me a little bit about the science behind this.
Yeah. So basically, you've read all the articles, you've saw the news blips, the ESPN, everything. The Yankees physicist that, came out with this here not so recently, once again, last year, he's actually not even with the Yankees anymore. He's with the Marlins.
Yeah.
And, they tried working with it a little bit last year as well. And basically what you're doing is taking wood away from places you're not supposed to hit the baseball. And so, yes, you're taking wood off the end. You're moving it more to, maximize that sweet spot. And, that's basically what you're trying to do.
This thing's 100% legal, no matter what league you're talking about. MLB, NBA, Federal League, all within compliance of the rules, right?
Yep. So MLB, they run the rule of the land. Basically, they tell you that you can't have a barrel that is more than 2.61 inches, and everybody is trying to get to that level. It's not necessarily needed to go that big, but everybody's within the full rule book. So yes, we've gotten some letters from the MLB, lots of questions. Obviously, MLB's on board, and maybe it's in due time here that the pitchers can't have all the advantages. So now it's time for the hitters' time to shine.
So more mass in the barrel, bigger sweet spot, right? So we're turning, weak hits, maybe some jam shots into, some more solid contact, right? I've heard it's a more balanced feel, gives you more complete control over the bat. The analogy I heard that I really liked was imagine, swinging a sledgehammer, where the weight's kind of all on the end there, or swinging a broomstick where it's, really evenly distributed. Obviously, those two would vary quite a bit in weight, but you kind of get the concept of what they're talking about. Faster swing speed, more bat control. Is that about it?
Yeah, and right away everybody wanted to order their standard 3330 or 3431. That might not necessarily be the case with this torpedo, as yes, you are balancing more of that weight, and when you have that -3, it's gonna feel different, and it's gonna feel possibly lighter. We've got some feedback from some of our guys, and they're like, it feels like there's nothing in my hands. Well, we're trying to make them closer to that -2, just so it feels as natural as you normally would swing. With that the mass missing towards the end, your cupping situation is going to be different. You're not going to want to take a huge cup out of that, so we're dimpling them, as we call it, or we're taking a half cup.
I had no idea the history of this went back as long as it does. I'm hearing and reading the same things that you're talking about. In terms of this MIT, professor that's just revolutionized the game. I think the first I heard of it was actually last year when Giancarlo Stanton was using it.
Yep.
A few times. During the end of the season, I know Francisco Lindor used it and had a really standout season as well. I know the list is absolutely growing quickly of guys who are using this. A lot of Yankees players, Anthony Volpe, Austin Wells, Jazz Chisholm, Cody Bellinger, Paul Goldschmidt, Minnesota's own Ryan Jeffers uses it.
Yeah. Yep.
And I know recently one of your clients, one of your more notable clients, is started using it, and I know he was kind of on a rush order. Tell us that story.
Well, that going back to that whole weekend, I was watching a little bit of that Yankees game when they started talking about it, and the bat world is my world, and I was like, well, here we go, and then all of a sudden, home runs hit, and my phone was like overheating. People were sending me the articles and the links and all the stuff, and torpedo, 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 and well, my boss and we talked on Sunday, and it's like we got to get to the office ASAP Monday morning and get this rolling. And so we got there bright and early, and I did a little bit of marketing. We got it uploaded to our website, and we were off to the races. We made a couple samples, took some pictures, all the stuff. Obviously, some agents were reaching out. Hey, my guys want to try this. It's like, okay, here you go. So yeah, Max Muncy, Dodgers, obviously. Hey, I want to try this. So we spun him one on Tuesday, overnighted it to LA. And I was like, he's going to demo this in the cage. He's going to take some hacks pregame, maybe something like that. I got home from work, and they're in the fourth inning, and he's up to bat with it. I'm like, okay. Like, that probably didn't have too large of a sample size as far as, getting a lot of hacks with it, but he used it, and there he goes.
It seems everyone's got an opinion on these things. I saw a pretty hilarious clip of Will Clark, famously of the San Francisco Giants, now
Another great
retired.
another great podcast right behind yours.
Right. Yep. 1 and 2. Us and yeah. Yep. But that's exactly what the clip I'm talking about. He's pretty much calling all the Yankees hitters junk, right? That they're getting jammed all the time, and that's why they needed to make this adjustment. So certainly very opinionated. Will Clark. Another opinion I saw was Dave Portnoy, who is very
All
classically a
Boston.
Red Sox fan. Yes. So you know how he's going to feel about any advantage the Yankees have discovered. But I think both those guys, especially Portnoy, are of the opinion that this thing should be banned. It's bad for baseball. What are your thoughts?
Part of my job is to sell these bats, but also at the same time, part of my job is to educate. And, just going back to the education portion of it, kids coming out of high school, kids coming out of college, they're used to swinging these 2 and 5/8 inch barrel bats, where the sweet spots are you're going to get base hits on your miss hits. Now, these bats in the MLB players' hands, minor league guys, they are hitting the sweet spot more often than you or I stole. I brought this bat to practice with my team, El Rosa Saints, this last Sunday, and we got good response. When you square it up, it's gonna go. But on balls where you are not using the barrel in the sweet spot, the ball response off of the end or off of the handle is not a result that you would probably want.
And the part you don't see in headlines is what the Yankees did a couple of games later. How many times did they strike out in that one?
I think like Wednesday they struck out like 16 times, but yeah, that's strikeouts aren't sexy. Home runs are, right?
That's right. And in my opinion, I mean, obviously, so bat isn't going to have much to do about anything if you're swinging and missing, but in my opinion, that's some of the bigger problems with the current MLB game is,
Right.
it's feast or famine, right? And I don't know if promoting the ends of that spectrum is necessarily good for baseball, but
And I don't
each
want
their
to
own.
think that, I don't want amateur hitters, minor leaguers, whoever, to expect that they're going to turn their 200 batting average into now I'm hitting home runs with this bat. That's not the intent. Obviously, these guys are the best in the world, and when you're giving them a tool to maximize their talent, those guys are able to do that.
So Trend and Mirage, are these things around to stay, or is this something that's going to fade once the news cycle's kind of played out?
That's the great unknown, and right now we're going to ride the wave. Um,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, obviously last week was kind of a whirlwind. Everybody wanted to get their hands on one. We are going to launch it on our website. It is going to be compatible with all of our Pro Model Pro Series bats. We have it available in birch and maple. So we're not going to make a model just that's the model. You're going to be able to have your same BR1 handle if you need to, or your 191 R10. So it you can work it into your repertoire.
Yeah, pull it out. Maybe it's a slump buster. Who knows? How often we'll see these things, at least in the amateur circle in Minnesota. But these are available now to order on maxbat.com.
So yeah, right now we have two really good models. Obviously, there's a lot more math, science, geometry in these bats. We've tried to condense the barrel options, so to say, down to basically 3, and we are fitting these, all within our medium large XL barrel models. So it is going to be compatible with those.
Just for the inquiring minds, what's the current price point on these things?
So right now, at the retail level, maple, it's considered a large or XL barrel bat, $199. Then if you go birch, that's $159. But it is also aligns with our Minnesota team pricing for all of our amateur leagues here in Minnesota. So we have different levels of quantity price breaks, 6, 12, 18, 24. And these torpedoes will fall right in line, and a lot of amateur teams have already ordered.
There you go. Get your groups together. Go get yourselves some torpedo bats. 100 points of batting average guaranteed, right, AJ?
Without a doubt.
Well, I love it. If you're not part of a team order, if you just need to try these things out yourself, you're sitting back and you're like, hey, I'll give this thing a go. Use the promo code FEDUP to save 20%. Go to maxbat.com. You can get them there. Tell them AJ sent you.
Yep, and just I'll plug me real quick. If you're looking for that team pricing, maybe your manager hasn't shared anything with you. You're not on social media. Just email me. Shoot me an email, aj@maxbats.com, and I'll be more than happy to share that with you guys.
I love it. I know your union break must be just about up, so we're going to let you run, but really appreciate you jumping on in a pinch and educating us as well as our listeners. So really appreciate you, AJ. Thanks again for coming on.
Hey, we're a couple of weeks away here from game day, so let's get her rolling.
Let's go. See you, buddy.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Great to get your information straight from the source. In this case, the manufacturer themselves. Really appreciate AJ hopping on in a pinch. I'm not sure if I'll be trying the torpedo bat. I guess time will tell. Like you, I'm always looking for that edge at the plate. Well, now it is time for our first ever Fed Up mailbag. I've got it right here for you YouTube folks. It's a little bit lighter than I was expecting, but let's go ahead and see what we got in here. Well, just the one submission, that can't be right. The post office must have really messed that up. But looks like we just had one that reached us successfully this week. So first of all, thank you very much to Mr. Casey Johnson for the submission. Casey, a loyal supporter of the podcast. Really appreciate you. And thanks for sending that in. We all know that input equals output, so really appreciate you taking the time to submit a question, especially since you are the only person to do so this week. Well, Casey's question comes in meme form. The question is, what is a wren? Well, in a literal sense, a wren is a native bird to the UK. The Eurasian wren is one of the smallest bird species in the country, but despite its tiny size, it possesses a powerful voice that they use to declare their territories. Their song is rich and complex, and often including trills, whistles, and chatters. However, in baseball context, the wren got a lot of recognition on the game Baseball Stars. Of course, the NES game from SNK that was released back in July of 1989 in the United States. Wren, of course, one of the players on the Lovely Ladies roster. There was a special power-up that you could grab at the team selection screen of the game. If you entered down, right, left, down, down, right, up, down, up, pressed A, you would get a special screen that asks the question, what is a wren? If you were to change that to a bird, don't forget the period, then it would ask you a follow-up question, when isn't it? And if you changed it to when it is, don't forget the period once again, then you would earn yourself a special power-up in that game. Really nostalgic submission there from Casey Johnson. Loved playing that game growing up. We'll be opening that mailbag once again, and I hope with our programming announcement that we're going to make at the end of the episode that thing will be overflowing next week. So really looking forward to those submissions. Keep them coming because I do think that that's a great way to just get some more participation from the league. Allow you to provide your own input and make the show better. For now, it's our time to bring on our next guest, so let's bring him on.
Batter up.
Our next guest is the manager of the Capital City Cannons. He is the tournament director of the Ron Catone Memorial Hickory Tournament. He serves on the Federal League Board as the North Division president. His apartment has many leather-bound books and smells of rich mahogany. He's kind of a big deal. Chris Kalina. Chris, welcome to Fed Up.
Thank you.
In all seriousness, I mentioned a couple of the ways that you have involved yourself in the senior baseball community in Minnesota, and I want to unpack some of those individually, but given how involved you are, you're fairly well known, you're a fairly well connected figure in the Fed. But for those that don't know you, and maybe for some of those that do, tell us your baseball story.
Well, for me, many of you that really know me and my roots, I am from this area. I the transplant in 2009 from Seattle. I can show pictures of back when I was a lot thinner and had long hair. And then number 51, where that actually comes from, was back then I looked like Randy Johnson back in the day. So that's actually the history of why I wear number 51 usually. Though I've been dabbling with number 64, and wear that a little bit here and there because I'm also a chess player. 64 squares on a chessboard, 64 numbers on my back, right? I started off in my 20s out in the Seattle area, got into SeaTac NABA. I think I had one hit my first year, and then went from that, and 2 years later, to being the home run champion. So, I developed the power, kept going with it, and, came out to Minnesota, carried over, kept playing, and was like, maybe I'll take one summer off, and I just couldn't do it. Got involved in TCMABL. I wasn't old enough to go in the federal yet, so a few years down the road, I get to be old enough, and voila, I found out about the Federal League, and I was like, wow, this is a great place to play ball.
I love it. We are still in kind of preseason mode where, games aren't being played yet. We're still catching people up on some of the off-season baseball scene that transpires over the 7 months, but you're certainly a big part of that. And one of the reasons why I thought you'd slot in so nicely here early in the season. And let's look at that chronologically. So as soon as that final out is recorded in the Federal League playoffs, everyone's focus kind of shifts to an event called the Ron Catone Memorial Hickory Classic. That's been renamed, but tell us how you came to be the tournament director of that event.
That's quite a story, actually. I'm glad you asked. Ron Catone himself, I had heard about him. I had heard about the Hickory tournament from Dave Marcio and Mark Talrico. Were at a bar where Bomber, Marcio was bartending, and they were talking about baseball, and I struck you out of 3 pitches. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Got to talking like, wait a minute, baseball, 35 plus? Oh, the tournament going on. Want to check this out. Name was given to Ron. Ron was like, well, I need players for my team. I'm having a team called the TC United that's just a hodgepodge of guys here and there. And first thing I step out there, and it was in Loretto that year, and the first night I'm out there playing under the lights, thinking, wow, this is great. And then I start looking down at my ankles going, oh, look at all these bugs. This is going to be an interesting night. It's a fun game, though. We end up being our only victory. I ended up having a hit every single game, and a couple people were turning their heads after some pretty good exit velos there. But to me, the thing that was most fun, though, is that last day when Ron, we had his 9th guy. So Ron had to play. There's no getting around it. Well, I guess I'm going to have to get in the lineup and get out there and play a little. Ron played the outfield, goes up there, and he's wielding that bat 3 for 3, solid line drives. And I'm telling you, they were no doubters. I'm just like, wow, where'd this guy come from all of a sudden? Why wasn't he in the lineup earlier?
Yeah.
But that was my first experience with Ron. Ever since then, just the ambiance and the fun that all the teams are having, I just felt like this has got to be a tournament. I've got to make this part of my year every year, and I always look forward to that tournament just because, just the way that went the first year. I just kept playing every single year, and got to the point where we had concessions for a while, and then it kind of got to be where me and Ricky Griffith did our own thing, started barbecuing, and that became part of the tournament. And just every year, it was just another whole different experience, seeing new teams come in, a couple other teams exit. And then that day, the news that Ron was no longer with us was that was definitely a heartbreaking moment. I already knew right then and there that that tournament had to be carried on because everybody wanted it to keep going. And I remember getting a call that very day, even from Ricky, just wondering, well, we're going to still keep the tournament going, right? Well, yeah, I think we need to kind of, deal with the situation at hand with Ron being gone here. I mean, then all of a sudden there goes Ricky, about a month and a half later, He passes away. And at that point, I really felt just like, wow, there really is nobody to carry this tournament on except myself. So I've got to I got to get this in gear and keep it going. But it only felt right to rename it the Ron Catone Memorial just because he's the one that pioneered it. He started it back in the early 2000s, and it just became a hit. Everybody loved it. I'm not sure if you know the history of how this actually started for Ron, but he started. It was just it was the last minute thing at the end of the season. People want to get a few more games in. Got that 34-year-old that's going to be eligible for next year. I want to have a look at this guy and see what it is. So he started that tournament just to give these guys a chance to get out there and try it out. You have one on defense, one on offense was the original way he had that. So you're allowed to have 2 players that are 34 years old still to this day, and that's the rule I've maintained just because I'm trying to keep the tradition that Ron had.
Yeah, I love that, and thank you for sharing that. And I love that event is so great. Very fun to see players from around the league that you may or may not get to see during the playoffs or throughout the year. So many different teams combine and collaborate on that event, and you've certainly added a number of great touches throughout the years. In terms of the grilling you mentioned and everything like that. That's a great time, and we will certainly miss for a long time Ron and Ricky and their contributions to not only that event but the Federal League itself. But certainly glad that somebody who has a close connection with those two and the founding of that tournament is able to carry it on.
Thank you. It's really truly an honor for me, being very honest. I'm very honored to be the person to do that.
Well, beyond the Roncatone, you are awfully active in the off season. You take a fall trip, you take a spring trip. Tell us a little bit about some of the travel tournaments that you participated in and what your role is with those teams.
Well, that would be the Bruins. That's some team that John Lipinski and Brett Hughes started, and I helped run that team. Just a little bit of sideline stuff there. I mostly let them guys do it. I don't play a ton down there because you look at the guys we have going down there, and you got a lot of talent, and you got pitchers like Castacalvo and Laird, and just a bunch of arms that you can just go out there and throw. Tim Duffy going down there behind the plate. We unfortunately did not have Castacalvo this year for going down to Arizona, so that really hurt us. He's normally our ace that goes out there, starts game one, and then first playoff games out there mowing somebody down again, and that gets us 2 wins right there. But we go down there with Cole Lambert's another good example. A guy like him to go out there and just throw. David Clocker's another one. Just a bunch of solid arms there, and then of course you got bats like Tim Duffy, Steve Kleppen, Joe Collier. You look at all the firepower you got there. A lot of fun, and you go out there and win a lot of games, put up a lot of runs. We've had success every year except for this last one. We made it to the playoffs and lost in round one for the first time ever. Berkeley, in the years past, we've won one playoff game. Unfortunately, this did not happen this year, and Brandon, I blame you, but hey, there were reasons. You just had a little one, so family. So congratulations, Brandon, in addition to your family. I didn't make it to the spring tournament this year. I just had a lot on my plate, so unfortunately I had to forego that. But that's the Sunshine Classic, and that ended up this year being the best that we've done. Can't call ourselves the quote-unquote champion, but top finisher, 6-0. It's really hard to argue with the fact that we were the top finisher. Being the South Florida Eagles, which that's names like Zambrano and Infante and just a bunch of guys that can just play. They know the game and in and out. And every year we end up facing them, having just a knockdown drag out down there with them. But this year was definitely Brandon Castacalvo's year for that. He went there and won that game. I believe it was 4-3 or 4-2 in the final on that. So that was definitely fun to watch. A lot of success down there in that tournament for the Bruins. We've been in the quote unquote premier game, which is the top finishers playing against each other every year so far, the last 4 years.
Yeah, congratulations to the Bruins on that offseason success. Really a lot of teams that travel from Minnesota. You see some familiar faces down in Arizona, whether it be the Mammoth or the Grays. Teams like the Web Gems and the Blenders, Oilers all go down to the other coast, down to Florida. What, in your opinion, is the reason why Minnesota teams are so successful despite the sheer quantity of teams that they bring?
Well, looking at just the amateur baseball scene, that was one of the reasons I actually moved here when I was choosing a place to go. I was done with Seattle and looking for where I'm going to go, what kind of job I can get. Well, the job checked out here. I'm a chess player as well, as I had mentioned before. 64 Squares. They have a good chess scene here. Housing costs are a lot less. What really sold me, though, I mean, I'm not going to lie, was looking at the amateur baseball. Everything from just, TCMABL, you got the North Metro League, and you look at, just the town ball scene. All these just awesome fields out there. And this whole state is built around amateur baseball, is the way I look at it.
Growing up here, I've known that about Minnesota baseball, but never knew that we were quite the chess destination. I'll say that.
No, it's equal to Seattle. There definitely are some strong players here. It's no slouch though. But I look at it this way, I was kind of equally in that one. Like I say, just the amateur baseball is what really was the deciding factor for me, being honest. And whether I was going here or there's a job in Texas I was going to take. And Minnesota was the winner. And boy, those winners we endure, I question it every year.
Yeah, you and me both. Well, another one of the literal hats that you wear is the player manager of the Capital City Cannons. Tell us a little bit about the history of that group and how you came to there it is, the
No.
aforementioned hat. Tell us a little bit about that group and how you came to be a part of that and how that group kind of got started and put together.
Well, that started. My first year in the Federal League was after my first Hickory, where I just talked about where I watched Ron and watched how this league went, and I just said, "Oh, the league's got to be the same way, so let's get into it." Ron actually, I find later Ron actually kind of pushed me toward this team because they were having some leadership issues, and Ron, didn't tell me this right away, but he felt like I was going to be the guy that's going to take this team under my wing and lead it. Well, I find this out a few years down the road when there were definitely some big issues that I won't even go into. Just management and personnel issues that need to be corrected immediately. In fact, we were on the brink of being eliminated from the league. It was an 8-7 vote before I said, "Well, what the heck? I guess I'll take over managing." And that was one of the stipulations. We had to have a new manager come in. So I started managing the team in 2012, and we were called the St. Paul Expos then. And it was a lot of those guys that carried over. But a few of the bad apples were told not to come back, and there were a few other people that didn't want to pay were told not to come back, and then a few others just said, "I'm done." But then that's where the interesting thing, and one of the issues we have is over the years, a lot of people don't like the fact that we don't like to play Sundays because we're all in TCM ABL. Well, and that's the issue I've got is I can't really get these guys to come over because they've been rooted on these teams for a long time. And they're like, "Well, we want to play in the Federal League. We love it, but I mean, I've been on this team longer, so they come and play, but they don't say, 'Oh, I'm just going to go all out and just be just on the Cannons. That's it.'" But we've had some success. Never actually won a title, but that's where the team just kept going. I kept building, adding more players, and we're so close every year. But just lose a 1-0 game to the Dan Pluff or Brower or something like that. When you got I got James after Ackman throwing, fun to watch, but you hate to be on the receiving end of that.
Yeah, you guys are typically a pretty tough out. Depending on who you get there and who you throw. But I know there's many teams across the league that have trouble with you. Mine being one of them. You guys have given us a couple of good runs over the years, and always a team, never a team you can take lightly. I can tell you that.
I'll never forget the first encounter we had down there. You guys thought, "Oh, we're going to hopefully go win the game and hope we're going to win the parking lot." And, well, I made sure that neither happened.
Yeah, you guys hold your own in that regard too. Um, your field's been under fire a little bit over there. Caught a little
Yes.
flack on the player poll, but I understand that there's some renovations in the works. I'll give you the platform here to just talk a little bit about that. What your efforts have been around improving it, and maybe what teams can expect if you continue to play there.
Well, first thing is we were nearly not going to play at all last year because I don't know if you might have seen the pictures of this turf insert they put in there late in the end of the year before, and I just was like, no mas, we're done after this. So I actually rescheduled a couple of games that were supposed to be there, and I said, well, we're not going to play on this thing. And it was high school kids that play there as well. The JV team that plays there, everybody said, well, we're done at this place. That's no longer an option for us. And the city goes, oh, wait a minute, maybe we need to reconsider what we're doing here, and maybe we need to put a new mound in. So all of a sudden, here it was about this time last year, you got a new mound getting constructed out there. So that was a nice little surprise. So that's the first thing that happened. We actually do have the mound in place. Right. Hearing about people saying that people are riding right down the middle of the dugout. Well, that's been an issue I've been irritated about, and I've got my thoughts on that. And the city has their thoughts. They're about the same. So I've been into several meetings about this. We're talking everything about dugouts to field quality, to infield and outfield, extending right field back, just tightening things up. Otherwise, they're going as far as even saying like concession and restroom building, which that's the last on the agenda. I figure I want to see the field get done first. But once that's all done, sure, go ahead. But it definitely is on the radar, and I've been trying to get people to promote it. There's been on the website. There's been all kinds of spots for people to go in there and like it. So I encourage anybody else, again, go to the City of Moundsview website, like all the baseball projects at Greenfield. Give us some love here. Let's go.
Yeah, I love that. I was able to help contribute on that website. I am going to echo what you're saying and ask other members of the league to go ahead and do that. Maybe we'll throw the link in the YouTube comments just to make sure that people can click out and go show their support for not only the Cannons but the field improvements as well. I know you've been very active in that. So if you're one of those that maybe threw in some shade, at the field on the player pool, you don't like playing there, do your part and go out and help get some renovations done.
Much appreciated, because we've definitely been working hard on that. So, and I've got, a couple guys on my team that have been standing right next to me, getting on there, trying to get out, and get people on the bandwagon. So it's definitely in the works.
Give us a brief rundown of some of the changes for your team over the offseason personnel-wise, and maybe what your expectations are for the upcoming year.
Well, we've got a lot of the returning players. I'd say about 80% of them are returning. We have had a couple retire. Definitely a couple nominated for the Hall of Fame who are deserving, hoping we can get another candidate or two in the Hall of Fame this year. But there's a couple new pitchers. Young bucks are coming in. Jeremy Laird, I have not confirmed yet that, personally, I've known him for years, but Brett Hughes insists that he's in, so I'm hoping that's the case. And if Jeremy's listening, come on over, buddy. We're waiting for you. Caleb Jester, unfortunately, just had back surgery, so he will not be starting the season, but he should be toward the end of the season out there playing. Hopefully we'll get him a few starts and get him ready. Been talking to Aaron Page, who formerly was a pitcher for the Anoka Bucks town ball team, so if we get that kind of an arm, that kind of a caliber pitcher, that's going to bode well for us. So it's definitely the thing I've been really looking at trying to do is, and just bolster the pitching. I mean, hitting wise, we've always had a bunch of guys that can hit the ball, so that's no problem there. But can't hurt to have another slugger,
Yeah, it never hurts to have the offensive firepower, but yes, you can never have enough pitching. I think that's true of our league and just about every level of baseball. You've been on the board now for 6 years. This is your 6th year on the Federal League board. Served in a number of different ways, but in particular, is there a contribution, whether it be an original idea, maybe a vote that you've cast, or a way that you've impacted the league from your board seat that you are most proud of?
I just really try to do what's best for the league, and everybody has their ideas. I just try to take those ideas and try to just amplify them and run with it. Go get people to supporting these ideas. I can't really think of one great idea I've had personally, but I've heard many of them come from other board members, and I take it and run with it. Okay, this is what I heard. I really like this, so just go promote it to every single person I know out there and try to get them on board with it. If it's going to be a good move for the league, then why wouldn't we?
So we've mentioned that you're an avid chess player. Tell me a little bit about some of the similarities you see in terms of strategy, whether you're commanding a chessboard or the dugout.
And it's funny you mention that, because a lot of people don't correlate the fact that the game of chess and you're managing a baseball team, very similar. Just the strategies of, okay, if I'm playing for one run, am I playing to go out there and just try to drive the ball somewhere, hit the ball as many times as I can? Am I trying to just move a runner over? And both teams really need to be trying to figure that out and try to counteract what they're doing. It's the same thing on a chessboard. And I don't know how many times I've sat there going, well, this is definitely a chess move here. You're going to try to go for a squeeze play. Well, we're sniffing that one out and planning ahead for it.
Yeah, always trying to think a couple of steps ahead.
Yes.
I can definitely see how that would correlate.
Definitely. I can, for the record, I can think up to about 20 moves ahead in certain kinds of positions. The fewer the pieces are on the board, the more I can actually see ahead and calculate.
My son's recently joined a chess club, and that's kind of the level I'm at here. So I don't know what my rating would be, but not ready to go toe to toe with you yet.
Well, the highest I've been, for the record on that, 2153 ELO, which is 47 points away from 2200, which is master level. So that's the level I've been at. Not there now, but that was my back in my heyday when I was really considered to be a strong player.
You've mentioned already a couple of the other leagues that you are a part of. Another one that we haven't mentioned yet, you're actually playing in the 50s league now. What should intrigue players of our league, and what can they expect if they're kind of on the fence of transitioning from 35 to 50?
Well, those games are still competitive. Definitely a big change. I mean, I go all the way from 18 plus to now 50 plus. So you're going facing a kid that's still, barely 18, 19 years old, is still whipping them in their 70s, 80s, whatever like that. And then all of a sudden next week you're out there trying to hit up 50s players. Well, yeah, they just throw strikes and they move the ball around and they put it in places where you're just going to be for weak contact. And yes, it's frustrating. I'm just going to tell you that right now. If you're looking for a fastball and you don't get it, and then you pop it straight in the air, you're just thinking a lot of words you probably can't say right now. But
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I can tell you last year, though, playing against your actual future Apple Valley A's, best pitch I saw all year from anything from 18 plus all the way to 28 and 35. This curveball this guy threw, and it was the last pitch he threw of the night. and it looked like it was going to hit me. I turned, ready to brace for it. All of a sudden, that ball just had this nasty slice on it. Came right in for strike three. And I just tipped the cap and walked away. What can you do? That was just a beautiful pitch. Couldn't believe it. Haven't been fooled like that in a long time, but that was just amazing to see that. So yeah, those guys still have it for sure.
I haven't seen the gentleman you're speaking about pitch in person yet, but I've definitely heard stories from some of our guys that are on both rosters of how he can bring it. But glad to hear that the league's competitive. I've had a chance to take in a few as a spectator. For anyone considering that jump, there's no reason you can't do both. I mean, the seasons are a little intertwined, but certainly it's a reduced schedule on the 50s league. Look up those leagues, reach out to somebody, and you can actually play before your age 50. Is that right?
Yes, 48 years old you can play, but you cannot pitch until you get to be 50 years old. Which Torrey Holt just turned 50, so he plays with us. Actually, as funny as Torrey's had a history with a lot of people, he's actually a really good teammate. I was really pleasantly surprised by that. And it's going to be fun to watch him actually take the hill out there. And Dave Killian's another one. I wasn't sure about him, but then I share a dugout with him. Really actually a class act. So it's kind of fun to get to know some of these guys a little bit more that, you've seen them before and you're like, what's with this guy, Then you get to know them and you realize they're actually really good teammates.
I had a chance to share a dugout for one game, actually at your event, the Hickory, and with Mr. Holt. And yeah, I would echo your sentiment. I enjoyed that game, and he contributed in a very meaningful way. So another highlight of why the Hickory is so fantastic. The guest we had on just before you was AJ Hadley of Max Bat. He was weighing in on the Torpedo bat. What do you know about it? What's your initial reaction?
Well, I don't know very much about it. I've seen it a couple times, and I'm just thinking, okay, is this a joke? Is this like just a really funny late day April Fool's prank or what? But I guess these are a real thing. Really, I can't really weigh in until I actually pick one up and try to swing it and see, what the story is of that. Because I can see it going either way. Maybe I like it, maybe I won't. But yeah, they certainly look funny.
I'm with you. Kind of a long bowling pin, but they
Right.
seem to be all the rage. They're not going anywhere, and you can definitely pick yours up at maxbat.com. Use the promo code FEDUP for 20% off.
Well, at this point, yeah, the older you get, anybody who's out there listening to this and you want to know, should I keep going? The answer is yes. You'll regret it if you stop. I've thought about it a couple of times, and maybe this is going to be it. Can't do it. Get out there and go play that, that last year, and then just make it a 1-year contract every year. As long as you can keep doing it, keep doing it. You definitely won't regret this. I thought I was going to stop back in my 30s, and no, it hasn't happened.
Well, your email address has baseball nut in it, and for all the leagues and teams and contributions that you have given the Fed and other leagues, you are certainly a certifiable baseball nut. I am super glad to have you as a member of this league, as a friend, and just grateful for all of your contributions. Really thankful for your time today, Chris, and look forward to having you on again sometime.
Definitely, Josh. Likewise, I enjoy the friendship, we've developed over the last few years here, and many more years to come, I hope. You and many of the others out there.
Love it. Thanks again, Chris. We'll see you soon. We'll see you on the diamond.
Thank you.
Well, so great to have Kalina on. So many of you know him, but now I hope that you know him a little bit better. I promised you a programming announcement earlier in the episode. So here it is. We are going to postpone our preview episode to week 4. So the preview episode where we have win-loss records for all 34 teams. We'll highlight the division winners. We'll predict a champion, MVP, as well as a Cy Young winner. That episode will now drop as episode 4. It coincides with opening day, April 23rd. The shift absolutely 100% necessary because next week we have a very special guest joining us that we absolutely had to accommodate. Cy Young Award winner and World Series champion Frank Sweet Music Viola will be joining the podcast. So we are going to open that mailbag up for your questions for Frank. Please flood that thing with anything you want to ask him. We'll try and cover as many of them as we can. I'll be recording with him on Thursday, April 10th. That's tomorrow. So be sure to have your submissions in by noon. Well, that is all the time we have for this edition of Fed Up. We'll see you next week.